Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 27th of March, comes to you from Mauritius, my last day here on holiday. Just a quick look at the markets. The equity markets mostly recovered, not the losses that we saw at the start of the week, but we are just seeing that just slowing down. We're seeing the dollar is still strong, bullish above the cloud, and the euro is consequently weak against the dollar. The dollar against the yen is actually weaker, the yen still being the safe haven currency, and sterling sitting fairly static at 131.80 with this Brexit uncertainty just really hovering around these levels waiting for a result. Looking at the S&P 500 index was up 0.75% last night. That's just keeping it short-term bullish. Just this route we saw over Friday and Monday hasn't been enough to take the chart bearish, although we do have a downside target. We still have upside targets. So the recovery doesn't look that threatened at the moment, and the same is true of the Nasdaq holding the cloud just. The Dow was up 0.5% last night, and again just holding on to its cloud strength. The Russell 2000 index, the broader based index in the US, is looking bearish. That is weaker, and we are below the cloud on the short-term chart. So we're seeing that again the large caps is where it's at. The futures in the US, the S&P future up 0.27%, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 1/3%, does suggest that the market will open higher in the US today. The FTSE 100 not yet open, of course, but was up 0.25% yesterday, and midcaps not looking as good. So we're seeing that theme across the board that midcaps, smaller stocks being hit, the blue chips holding on. So for the moment, that's the position, and the DAX also we're seeing lower there. CAC 40 also bearish below the cloud. So unlike the US markets, European markets have been hit on that short-term basis. Japan also down 0.5% at the moment. The Hang Seng actually up 0.5%, and the Chinese market up nearly 1%, and so just pulling back into bullish territory here, so looking a little bit better there. India continues to look relatively strong, up 0.5%, and at no time really threatening the short-term trend. We've got good upside targets in India. The Aussie market was little changed, and if we look at commodities, Brent crude was up is up 0.25% at the moment. WTI just down slightly, so we're seeing a slight divergence where that's bearish and Brent is bullish. US nat gas sitting at $2.72. Gold is at $1,315, still looking bullish on all three time frames. Still holding on to the gains that we saw with the market route in the week. Silver not looking quite as bullish, just ticking below the cloud, bearish short term. US 10-year yield sitting at 2.41%, so making new lows there. So we saw on Friday we've really well and truly taken out that January low, and we're seeing now bond yields in the US turning bearish. So the yield's now bearish on all three time frames with downside targets, so the picture is really very changed there. German bond market is the bond price is looking strong, with yields in Germany to negative or turning zero. Taking a look at US stocks, first of all, we see here the US market recovered last night. Europe mostly recovering yesterday off the back of the US, and Asia up as well. On the Dow 30, the best performer was Walt Disney. They're up 2%. And the worst performer was United Group Incorporated. Apple were actually down 1%, so they're just really still struggling there. And then the Nasdaq, just looking at the percentage performers, Biogen was up 5.7% after a terrible drop previously. And if we look at the downside, Lucamon was down 2%. Netflix also down nearly 2%, but their trend holding quite strongly. In the Aussie market, we had Eclipse Group up 22% after massive falls last week, and Tassel Group down 6%. Still some pretty big falls going on in the market. And we look at the Nifty 50 here. We see the live prices coming in from Yahoo. Yes Bank continuing their recovery really, and they were up 5%. Best performer, Indus Bank also. We're seeing financials in India, State Bank, Indiabulls Housing, mostly the financials that are up. And if we look at the downside, we see here it's Hindustan Petroleum down, so resource stocks being hit there. Taking a quick look at Europe, not yet really open. The FTSE 100 yesterday, Ocado Group was the best performer, up 4%. There's stock making new highs and looking really fantastic on the chart. On the downside, we had Carnival down 8.5% yesterday, so really bad news hitting them there, them falling further. FTSE 250, we had Clarkson Group up nearly 8%, so a bit of a recovery after their recent rout. And on the downside, we had Amigo Holdings down 4.6%. That chart looking pretty terrible. In Europe, stocks in Europe, we had Fresenius in Germany. They were up 3.5%. And on the downside, we had BMW down a further 1.5%, continuing to underperform the market and looking weak. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.